to Jesus Christ, and welcome to this week's episode of God with Us Live. Every week, we're joined by men and women, monastics, clergy, and laity, exploring exciting and inspiring ways to live our Eastern Catholic faith today. Your host is Father Deacon Nick Medelsky, a husband, father, and deacon of the Ukrainian Catholic Eparchy of St. Nicholas. And now, here's Father Deacon Nick.
Hello and welcome once again, God with Us Live listeners. Father Deacon Nick Medelsky, excited as always to be here with you to talk about wonderful things going on in our Eastern Catholic churches. And actually today we're going to do something slightly different. Obviously, iconography is something that's near and dear to all of our hearts as Eastern Catholics, especially those of us in the Byzantine churches. But today I thought we'd look at iconography from a different angle to kind of give us a fresh perspective. And there is actually an Iconographers Guild up here in Minnesota that's composed largely of Roman Catholics. And I thought it would be interesting to talk with the director of that guild, who's a very accomplished iconographer herself, just about what iconography adds for Roman Catholics, as well as kind of what was involved in her training and all sorts of fun things like that. So without further ado, without me giving away all of the fun content and without stealing any of her thunder, here is my guest for the day, Judy Symalla. So welcome, Judy. And if you wouldn't mind, could you tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So as you said, my name is Judy Symalla, and I live in Stillwater, Minnesota, and I attend St. Michael's Catholic Church, Roman Catholic Church. I live with my husband here, Dennis, and I have 3 children, 2 grandchildren, and a very happy family. I am an iconographer, and I am the founder and director of the St. Croix Catholic Iconographers Guild.
Very cool. Very cool. So obviously, the iconography is a passion for you, but as most of our listeners probably know, iconography, at least for a lot of Roman Catholics, is still somewhat a fairly newly revived tradition. If we're talking about, centuries of time, right? It's a little different. So would you mind telling us how you kind of first became interested in iconography?
So my background is I was a math major, and I did work in the industry for a while, and then I stayed home to take care of my children. And I've always been a very creative person, doing just about any arts or craft, except for painting, that you could think of. And so my husband saw a flyer for an iconography workshop, and he suggested it to me because then I could learn how to paint. And so I took the workshop, and it was so much more than learning how to paint. I learned how to pray. I was so taken by what I was learning. It was very hard for me. I prayed and prayed and prayed for help, and spent time in prayer and thanksgiving. And I just really felt during that workshop that I had to do this, that this had to be part of my life. I wasn't sure how, but I had to do this. And the other thing about the workshop I took, it was with iconographer Nick Markell. And when he has a workshop, he also teaches the theology behind it and the spirituality. So he was saying things, telling me things that telling the whole class, I should say, that I didn't know. Like John Paul II called us to breathe with both lungs, or Nicaea II, that we should be venerating icons, or even our catechism that tells us icons express an image, the same gospel message as scripture. And if I'd heard any of this before, it hadn't sunk in. So here I am, a Roman Catholic, thinking I'm supposed to be doing all this, and I've never heard of it. So after the workshop, I started studying and really asking a lot of questions, and came to the understanding that this is part of my tradition, and it should be done, and it should be shared. And so I got my supplies, and I got started.
Just like that. So obviously that worked. Yeah. I was going to say, obviously you started that first workshop was kind of your introduction to a lot of it, but I'm sure there was a lot more training involved, as well as different experiences that kind of helped continue to form you as an iconographer.
Yes. So I did take several workshops with Nick Markell, and that gave me a good foundation to work from. And then I started taking classes from a Russian iconographer, a Greek iconographer. I took Professor Taras Timo is Ukrainian Catholic at Catholic University, and I took his lecture series on theology and history, which was very, very good. As I said, I didn't paint before, so right after I took the workshop, I started volunteering at the ceramic shop in Stillwater, so that I was making their samples. So I was painting a lot. And I got really comfortable with the brush. I also had, I think, more opportunities than a lot of people who start taking workshops, simply because I started the guild, and then I also had a lot of opportunities to work on my teachers' projects. So I was getting, even though I was working alone, I was still getting a lot of feedback and learning. And then I did understand that to be an iconographer is far more than just the ability to paint. And right away, I just started reading everything I could. And later, I learned that not only did I need to learn the history and the theology, but I really needed to know the church fathers. I needed to know the apocryphal books to understand what's going on in the icons. And so for the last 11 years, it's been my complete passion. Family comes first, but then iconography.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you mentioned Taras Timo. He was one of our instructors in our diaconal formation, and his class was on iconography, and it was unbelievable the things he was able to pull out. Even someone who's somewhat familiar with icons, but to really understand the different aspects, as well as especially the theological aspects of iconography, it was just fantastic. So if you Google his name, listeners, and he's offering a course. He often does an online course on iconography. Just fantastic. Can't recommend it enough. So obviously, as you mentioned, you've not only created your own icons, but also helped with the creation of others, as kind of, either with teachers or with, even through the guild, right? There's some projects that you've worked on as a guild together. But I thought I'd ask something a little different, and I don't know if anyone's ever asked you this question, but is there one particular icon that you've created or been a part of its creation that kind of stands out to you as particularly special, or maybe we can't really say this, but maybe even your favorite?
So I kind of chuckle at that question, because that would be like you asking me if I have a favorite child. And I wouldn't not answer that because I want to protect the children. The truth is I love them all equally. I can talk about special things about them, so I can do that for my icons as well. So one that was an incredible opportunity and icon for me is the icon of the Epiphany, the Visit of the Magi. I got a grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board, which gave me a lot of time to work on creating this icon and others. And because of that, I was able to push myself to learn Byzantine sketching and certain elements during the painting process that I wasn't really comfortable with in painting the icon. I could do it, but it didn't click. And so I spent a lot of time in prayer, and I really felt that God gifted me to understand that step, and now that step flows much easier. So this icon of the Epiphany, when people see it, really like it. God definitely gave me a gift to let that flow in composition. And then other icons I think that are really special are icons that allowed me to pray. Just like in any form of prayer, there's times when you're praying and it's maybe dry, or maybe it's just words, but you know God's listening. And other times in prayer, in general. You really, you feel something, or you experience something, or you learn something. And so the icon, sometimes in the icon painting, it's much more prayerful or spiritual or meaningful. And one in particular did Sloanus Casey, who is a local who is up for canonization. He was confirmed at my church here in St. Michael's. And so I was commissioned to do this icon, and I read as much as I could. I read a couple books about him, and I prayed. And the whole process of painting that icon was almost like spending time with Sloanus Casey and praying about his life and praying about thanking God ahead of time. And it was a really spiritual experience. I was delighted then that the person who commissioned it actually donated the icon to my church here. And people go on pilgrimage to visit the sites that Sloanus Casey had been either baptized or confirmed. And I have a picture of one of his relatives kneeling in front of the icon and a relic, praying. And it moves me every time I see that photo, but it also just moves me to see the icon in a prominent place where people kneel down and pray. And I hadn't set out to be an iconographer that anyone knew or anything like that. I did it because I had to do it. It was so drawn to it. So it's an interesting experience to be in the place I am now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm a big fan of Blessed Sloanus Casey as well. I grew up in Metro Detroit, so I've visited his tomb there in Detroit several times, and I was blessed to be able to be there at the Beatification Mass in Detroit. I still have as yet to make the pilgrimage to the parish in Stillwater, though, and I'll have to add that to my list, especially knowing that there's an icon of him there. That's a beautiful thing to look forward to, and something that I'll have to pack up the kids and head out that way someday. So you've kind of touched on this a few times since we've been talking together, but as a Roman Catholic, can you kind of maybe go a little bit more in depth, kind of explaining what iconography has added to your prayer life? Because obviously in Roman Catholic churches, there's a lot, has its own tradition of devotional art, statuary as well as paintings and things like that. But iconography, at least the way most people talk about it, right, kind of specifically refers to the Eastern churches, whether in the Greek tradition or the Russian, the Slavic tradition. So what has iconography added to your prayer life, added to your spirituality as a Roman Catholic?
Okay, so the way I viewed art in the Roman Catholic Church, or the statues, before I became an iconographer, was specifically statues. To me, they were like possibly photographs of loved ones that reminded me, like if I walked by a statue of Mary, pray to Mary, remember she loves you. And I would never pray to a statue as if I was praying through a statue and actually communicating with Mary. I could pray to Mary, but it wasn't using the statue in that way. And I never, my understanding wouldn't have been, although it might be with some, that if I touch the statue and in a loving way, that veneration was being passed on to Mary. That wasn't an understanding that I had, and I still don't for a lot of our current art or statues, because they're beautiful and I love them in my churches, but they don't operate the same way to me as an icon would. Now, I had the opportunity when my daughter was studying a semester in Rome to go with my husband to Italy, and this was just like 2 or 3 years ago. And while I understood that icons are part of our tradition, I experienced it when I was in Rome and Assisi and Florence. There's icons in the form of mosaics or in panel paintings everywhere. America is kind of a unique place in that that tradition wasn't brought over. But in Italy, and my children have traveled in other countries in Europe, and the churches are old and have icons. So for me, it just really reminded me that this wasn't just part of our tradition. It's still our tradition. It's just not necessarily here in America.
Beautifully put. Yeah, absolutely. Especially there in Italy with all of the beautiful mosaics. St. Mark's Cathedral is a beautiful example there. If people want to look online at pictures of that cathedral, just full of mosaics and iconography. So like you said, it's definitely part of the Roman tradition as well. It's just kind of faded here in the United States, at least, right? Where it kind of fell into the background there for a while. So beautifully put. And again, thank you so much for sharing that. I think a lot of our listeners will find that interesting to hear. So we're going to head into a break here on God With Us Live. Once again, Father Deacon Nick speaking with Judy Symalla from the St. Croix Iconographers Guild, and we'll be talking more about that guild when we come back from our break here on God With Us Live. Stay tuned.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Scenes with the Saints. Do you know which holy iconographer healed people with paint? Saint Alypios joined the newly founded Peczewskim Lavra monastery in the late 11th century. Watching the Greek iconographers who came to richly adorn the beautiful church for the new monastery, Saint Alypios soon learned how to paint these beautiful windows to heaven himself. Despite his growing fame as an iconographer, he never asked for payment. If the icons in a church had been damaged by age or neglect, St. Alypios would bring them back to the monastery and he would restore them free of charge. If someone did offer him money, St. Alypios would split it into thirds. 1/3 to the poor as alms, 1/3 to purchase supplies for painting more icons, and the final third for any needs that he might have. One time, a wealthy man from Kiev asked 2 months from the Caves Monastery to have St. Alypios paint some icons for a church that he was building. The monks took the money for themselves, hid the boards supplied for the icons, and never told St. Alypios about the commission. After many months, the man grew impatient and complained to the hegumen about having never received the icons he paid for. Discovering the deception of the other monks, St. Alypios went to find the boards given by the rich man, only to find that they were already adorned with beautiful icons. In a reverse of St. Luke the Evangelist, who trained as a physician and then became an iconographer, St. Alypios trained as an iconographer, but later became a miraculous healer. On at least one occasion, a man afflicted with leprosy came to the Caves Monastery asking for prayers. Recognizing the image of God in this poor man, St. Alypios did as he had always done with so many other damaged icons, and he began to anoint the man's sores with paint. As St. Alypios painted, the sores were healed, and the man was completely cured. As St. Alypios neared the end of his life, the man who had painted and restored icons for many churches both near and far was himself given an icon, this time by an angel, who painted the icon of the Dormition of the Most Holy Theotokos. After the Feast of the Dormition, St. Alypios passed away from this earth, and that same angel carried his soul up to heaven. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Scenes with the Saints. Join us again next time when we learn more about the lives of these holy men and women.
And welcome back, God With Us Live listeners. Father Deacon Nick Medelsky here again with you, speaking with Judy Symalla of the St. Croix Iconographers Guild. And in the first half, we kind of talked a little more on the personal level about how you got interested in iconography and what it's kind of added to your prayer life, different icons that you've been a part of the creation of. But we've also been mentioning this Iconographers Guild several times. And so I thought it would be great to talk in the second half kind of what this guild is about, kind of where this idea came from, and maybe you can explain the name as well.
Okay. So at my first workshop, I remember my teacher, Nick, saying that it would be beneficial for any place that he teaches if they would form a guild, because then they could continue painting together. And so this was my first workshop, and I'm brand new, and I'm still trying to figure out how to paint. And I look around, and I know there's people there that have been painting icons for a long time. And I'm wondering, who's going to step up? Who's going to do it? And no one did. And I thought, well, that's too bad. So my second workshop, he asks for the same thing. And again, I'm only on my second workshop. Yes, I've been practicing at home, but who's going to do this? I'll join. And it was like a spark in my head saying, no one's going to do this. You have to do this. Maybe it was anyway, I did eventually feel very called to founding the guild. I didn't necessarily want to lead a guild, but I knew it would be a good thing, and I took it on. And we started very small. A lot of people were interested. We picked a day and a time. And for our very first meeting, I actually brought a dozen eggs. I brought brushes, pigments, and everyone for the first time made their own egg emulsion, mixed their own paints, and we practiced line work. So that is our beginning. We were a very humble beginners group. And then I believe in thinking big. And so I let people know that whatever idea they had, it wasn't too big. And just because they suggested it didn't mean they had to be the one that did it. So we've been, I think that has given people a lot of freedom to say what they want. And we've just continued adding things as opportunities came up. So we actually did mission work. We went up to an Indian reservation and painted the iconic and decorative elements in an old church on an Indian reservation. That was quite the experience. But we also do group projects. We're currently working on an icon for the shrine at Our Lady of Champion, which is where Mary has appeared in America. We've done other group projects if a convent needs an icon or if someone's motivated to do an icon. It's good for us. It's very difficult to paint together. Very difficult to paint together. And on this last project, I've had 16 people. So they look to me for direction, but I also try to give them enough freedom that they're growing. And people, when you have to teach or when you learn one-on-one from someone, you learn so much faster. So they're very good for us in that way. But then we have these beautiful icons that we can share with others. The big thing that the Guild does is to provide the workshop once a year here in Stillwater. And our favorite thing we do is our retreat every September. The retreat is meant for people that have at least taken one workshop so that you can work kind of on your own, because we have a quiet prayer space where we paint. You can whisper if you need help, and that's all good. But we also run it as in a very monastic way that we're serving and being served. We have specific prayer times. People are assigned to specific meals where you're responsible to serve and clean up, and then other meals where you are served. And it's a beautiful, beautiful experience. I look forward to that every year. I started a book club through it. Anyone can belong to the Guild. Anyone that gives me their email address is a member. Once a year, I do put out a request for funds because it does take money to do this. And people generously donate. And basically the idea to donate without being required to is it's a definite sign that the people who donate really believe in what we're doing. So we do meet once a month on Thursday, and we may have a speaker or a project to work on. And I don't tend to worry about what is coming up the next month. By the last week of the previous month, there's something, and I put it on the calendar. I send out a newsletter through the email, which anyone can sign up for, but it's also really convenient to go to the Guild's website because I post the newsletters there, and we do have a Facebook page that I post the newsletters. And on the website, you can also scroll down on the homepage to see what workshops are coming up. I do coordinate workshops for Nick Markell. So if we have workshops in other parts of the state, or we've even gone to California and he's gone to North Dakota, I post them all on the Guild's website. I do keep track of other teachers that are teaching. So if people contact me, I'm able to find out what their need is, because some people want to do online classes or are interested in acrylic instead of egg tempera. And so I can advise people where to go with that. And then also supplies for iconography are really expensive. So we do keep some of them on hand so that people can buy them at close to cost and start out their adventure in iconography.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. It's a lot of great work that you guys are doing there. And I just wanted to add for those listening, the St. Croix part is after the St. Croix River, which runs right by Stillwater there. And St. Croix, of course, is from the French for the Holy Cross. So I think that's a very appropriate name for an iconographers guild to have. And we've kind of, you've mentioned a lot of the different programs that you guys are able to offer, the meetings, the book club, the retreat, different workshops and things like that. But also you've been able to work on projects for churches in the area, as well as, like you said, that Native American reservation that was in one of the Dakotas. And so there have been different ways that, the Guild has been kind of able to give back, right, to different churches, different organizations here in the Midwest and elsewhere too. But could you talk maybe a little bit on what kind of impact this Guild has had, maybe feedback you've heard from some of these different places the Guild has been able to contribute to the iconography there, or people who've joined the Guild, just different sides of the coin there on what kind of impact this has had.
Okay. So one thing I could also note is that we do have people outside of the U.S. as Guild members, or at least people that I am in contact with quite a bit in Africa and Poland and Italy. And these are all iconography contacts. And that might be the biggest impact, is to have iconographers, to have a network of other people doing similar things. And it's really exciting to me to have a contact in Poland, as I am 100% Polish, and we do order our boards from Poland. But our impact on churches has been, well, when we first started, we, in a way to give back and to learn to paint together, we donated icons to the three parishes of Stillwater and Bayport. They cooperate. So we did a St. Michael, a St. Mary, and a St. Charles. And then going into other churches, which is more me going with the workshop, to see the impact that a workshop has on the students is quite incredible. You don't know why they've taken the workshop or what they're going to get out of it, or the frustrations they might experience during it, or the joys. But in the end, you know that your week with them was completely worth it. People have so much to say, or so much joy about having created an icon, or feeling a retreat, or learning something new. So when people attend the Guild, the biggest comment we get that surprises me, I guess I am in inviting people as well as other Guild members are, but they feel instantly like they belong, or like they've been there forever, that they're recognized, they're invited in. So I guess just by default of who we are, we've become a very inviting Guild, and it's a place for people to meet, and some very strong friendships have formed. As you said, people know of the Guild, and so priests might contact me if they have a need in iconography or a question to understand something. And it's really good to be that resource.
Absolutely. That's one of the first things I noticed when we moved here to Minnesota, especially visiting different Roman Catholic churches around the Twin Cities area, is how many have iconography, whether it's, a large work kind of up in the main altar area, or smaller ones in the hallway in the narthex. It's been really cool to see iconography all over the place, not just in our churches and our Eastern churches here in Minnesota, but also the Roman Catholic churches. And I particularly remember that every year the Basilica in Minneapolis in November, I believe it is, has a huge display of icons.
Yes, they do. One year, one of my grants was in studying my teacher and putting together his work from 30 years. And so during that Festival of Icons, we also had downstairs a gallery of his prints of all of his icons he had done for 30 years. And to have that presence beyond what was going on downstairs, I think really opened up a lot of people's eyes to iconography. It was a beautiful reception we had, and I created a catalog of all his works that is a resource to me. When I'm looking for ideas, I like to look through it. But the festival upstairs, I was delighted when I was invited to start displaying my icons there as well. And I'm hoping it'll open up to even more iconographers. I do appreciate, the older ones that are brought in every year, but I do really like the idea of bringing in fresh ideas, and I'm excited for that festival to continue. And I will continue letting them use my icons.
Very cool. Very cool. And especially, as Eastern Catholics, Minneapolis was kind of an important place in the history of our churches. And so to see kind of the healing between the Roman Catholic and the Eastern Catholic churches through that festival is a beautiful thing to see as well. That I found that really particularly beautiful to see all those icons there at the Basilica. And like you said, a lot of people who, just like you had been before the workshop, right, hadn't really been that familiar with iconography or icons, and now to be able to see a whole bunch of them. There's a whole bunch of them there for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to visit at the Basilica there, and really cool to expose people to that spirituality, to that iconography. And like you said earlier, something that definitely is a part of the Roman tradition as well, but to also breathe with both lungs, as St. John Paul II was fond of saying. So we've been talking about the Guild a lot here. For those who are interested, you mentioned they just need to give you your email to be added to the Guild. But where can people find out more about the Guild and kind of the different workshops and things like that you offer throughout the year?
Okay, so if you just want to Google St. Croix Iconography, it'll probably be the first thing that shows up. But if you want to be more precise, it's www.stcroixiconography.org. And on that homepage, you'll see where you can email me if you want to be on the list. Put me as a contact so that I don't go to spam. And then on that homepage, if you scroll down, you can see the current workshops that are available. And there's a lot to read on there. And I'm actually working on a couple more tabs right now for some upcoming projects.
Very cool. Very cool. Again, stcroixiconography.org is the website, and there's a Facebook group as well, right, where you post things too. So again, if you search on Facebook for the St. Croix Iconography Guild, that'll come up there, and you can check that out as well. Judy, once again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening here on God With Us Live, finding out more beautiful things going on in our Catholic churches, not just our Eastern churches this week, but definitely involving our Eastern traditions as well. Tune again next week to find out more beautiful things going on in our churches. God bless.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of God With Us Live. Make sure to tell a friend or two about us and subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to follow God With Us online on Facebook and Instagram for even more great content about the Eastern Catholic churches. And don't forget to check out all the other great Eastern Catholic podcasts at godwithusradio.org, where faith meets life. God With Us Live is a production of God With Us Radio, hosted, produced, and edited by Nick Modelski. Send us a message at info@godwithusradio.org.